Joe Bob Briggs. And in just a minute now, some goons in San Francisco's Chinatown are going to steal Kurt Russell's truck and shoot fire out of their fingernails and turn a whole heck of a lot of 30-foot somersaults in the air for no reason. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? I'm talking about Big Trouble in Little China with some of the best kung fu footage ever shot. Also, hysterically funny movie. And the second movie is Theodore Rex starring Whoopi Goldberg. We won't dwell on that. Okay. Whoopi Goldberg on Monstervision. I need a cigarette. Only kidding. Ted doesn't like cigarettes. I'm reformed anyway from cigarettes. I used to smoke cigarettes. I was an addict. I admit that, though. I was a miserable nicotine head. Two packs of Marlboros a day, but I quit. And I'm proud that I quit. Unfortunately, it was in the 70s when I quit, so I became a cokehead. But remember when it was cool to snort powder? It was cool. That's the only reason I did it. But I became a sniveling, paranoid cocaine addict, and so I got professional help, and I quit. It was hard. I was an addict, but I quit, and I'm proud that I quit. Unfortunately, it was so hard quitting cocaine that I started smoking cigarettes again. But this time I only smoked 1 pack of Marlboros a day, and I was proud of that. But I could see after a while that I was, I was fooling myself, because then I was a double nicotine head, and so I quit again. Unfortunately, I started drinking more and more, because, first it was just, just 2 or 3 scotches at lunch, and then it was 7 or 8 scotches at dinner, and finally it was 17 scotches, 7 tequila shooters, and vodka martinis, and a Coco Loco for breakfast. But for a long time, I told myself that I could control that, but the day came when I had to face the fact that I was an addict, I was a miserable, smelly drunk, and so I had to quit. So I quit. Then after 6 months of quitting, I got real drunk one night and quit again. And I was real proud of quitting the second time. But, it was about 3 months later that I realized how fat I was getting. See, I love chocolate, and I love food in general. And I'd go to Denny's in the middle of the afternoon and eat the whole left side of the menu, and then I'd go to Mrs. Fields' Cookies for dessert. One week I gained 30 pounds, and people thought I was dying of cancer. They thought it was medication that was bloating my body. I took down all the mirrors in the house because I didn't want to see the truth that I had become a 470-pound circus freak. I tried that ultra slim fast for a while, but I was able to drink 950 milkshakes a day, so that didn't work. And then finally I went to one of those obesity camps where they chain you to a bed and wire your jaws shut and beat the crap out of you every time you mention food. And so after 3 months of obesity therapy, I was cured. I was a foodaholic, and I'm proud I was able to beat that. And learning that I didn't have to be fat anymore made me realize what I'd been missing from life. And so for the first time, I stopped to smell the roses. I'd walk in the park every day smelling the roses. And then I started walking in the park at night, too, because the roses smelled different at night. And then I decided to start living in the park because I couldn't get enough of those roses. I had to smell roses at all hours of the day or night. And then one night I got mugged in the park and left for dead. And a few hours later at the hospital, I realized I had a rose addiction. So I went to this special 3 times a week therapy group for botanical addictions, and that helped a lot. And especially there was this girl named Teresa who first pointed out to me that I was addicted to addiction. And I loved Teresa for that. She suggested that I see a therapist about cutting down on my therapy sessions, so I received counseling for therapy addiction. And every time I went to a therapy addiction counseling session, I was able to eliminate a botanical addiction counseling session. And so I'm almost finished with the therapy addiction counseling, and I'm down to 3 botanical addiction sessions a week now. And now that I have more free time, I spend all that time with Teresa. And 3 weeks ago, I saw her 6 times in 1 week. And the week after that, we went to this resort in Colorado for the weekend, and last week I saw her 94 times. And in fact, just thinking of the name, I gotta go. Sorry, I gotta go see Teresa right now. Big Trouble in Little China, roll it. How'd I get off on that? I'm not really an addict, Sometimes a little heroin, but only when I'm depressed.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Big Trouble in Little China on TNT.
Is that some great fantasy kung fu or what? Those 3 guys who come down out of the sky with lampshades on their heads, they're named Thunder, Lightning, and Rain. And Thunder, the main guy, is played by the great Carter Wong. He's a household name in Hong Kong. He's a great martial arts star. He's right up there with Jackie Chan. But this was the first time he was ever seen on the American screen. But anyhow, Carter Wong is one of those guys. He is the real deal. He was born in Macau, and when he was 10 years old, he was sent away to one of those Shaolin Kung Fu temples, you know, that they have in the movies, so he could be disciplined in the fighting arts. And he studied with the grandmasters of the Dragon style, the White Brow style, Chow Ka Quin, Hung Ka Quell, and Choi Lee Foot. You think I'm making this up, don't you? He studied all those styles, and then at the age of 17, he went to Okinawa to practice under 10th Red Belt Grandmaster Tanaka Galan, resulting in a guy who is himself, Carter Wong is a Grandmaster himself in 4 different martial arts forms: karate, kung fu, taekwondo, and hapkido. I think he's the only guy who's a Grandmaster in all 4. And he's been the chief martial arts instructor for the police departments of Hong Kong, Singapore, Macau, and New York City. He taught Kung Fu to the New York City cops. He invented and teaches his own style of Kung Fu, and it's called Jan Jay Pai Kung Fu, or Patient People Kung Fu. Is this a tough guy or what? And then in 1986, he made this movie for John Carpenter called Big Trouble in Little China, where he takes on Kurt Russell. And guess which guy gets his butt beat in the movie? Okay, roll it. But the fight choreography in this baby is amazing. You know, I invented my own style of martial arts. It's a fairly complicated style, though. What you do is you have to show your opponent your backside while leaping in the opposite direction. I call it the hiney removal form of Kung Fu.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Big Trouble in Little China on TNT.
Whoa! I'm already out of breath. We're only on the 2nd commercial break. This is an interesting John Carpenter movie. Instead of being suspenseful like most of his movies, like Halloween and The Thing, he just makes everybody out of breath for the whole movie. This is the fastest movie ever made. There's a new plot development about every 30 seconds, so I'm not even going to try to figure it out. In fact, the funniest parts of me are when the Chinese guys keep trying to explain to Kurt Russell all the weird Chinese mythology, like they've known it all since childhood, and they understand it perfectly well, even though it doesn't make a lick of sense. So, you know what I forgot to do, though? What is wrong with me tonight? Did we do the drive-in totals on this baby? We didn't even do that, right? We did not. Okay. Let's do it now. We got them racked up? All right. We have 57 dead bodies, 1 kidnapping, 4 motor vehicle chases, 1 wheelchair chase, 1 white slavery ring. No, wait a minute. Yellow slavery ring. 1 machine gun massacre, 1 machete battle, multiple blue finger flame, 1 zombified levitating 2,000-year-old man with really bad fingernails, exploding building, exploding temple, knife to the forehead, 1 ocean of chained skeletons, 1 palace of golden Buddhas, poison gas, 9 kung fu scenes, and good ones they are. 4 stars. Okay, got that done. Let's get back to it. Time for the exposition scene. I hate the exposition scene, you know, where they all sit around and they talk about what the meaning of everything in the plot is, with Kate Burton as the nosy, crusading reporter. This is Kate Burton's big film debut. Kate Burton, best known for being the daughter of Richard Burton.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Big Trouble in Little China on TNT.
No wonder Lopan is cranky. He hadn't had a woman in 2,000 years. He's got to have a green-eyed one. I got a friend like that. You go, hey, man, where's that girlfriend of yours? And he says, oh, that one, I got rid of her 3 months ago because she wore red nail polish. You know, one of those guys who has to marry a perfect woman? You want to go, hey, man, Paulina Poroskova is taken, Charlie. Anyhow, Lopan is played by James Hong, the veteran Chinese-American character actor. He actually started out as a stand-up comic back in the 50s, but he was so bad as a comedian that he had to give that up, and he went to USC and he got an engineering degree, but he was bored by that, and then he started acting, and he's been in more than 300 TV shows and films and commercials. And you know what I can't believe, though? This movie's got more great Oriental actors than you'll ever find in one place. James Hong, Carter Wong, who we mentioned before, great martial arts star from Hong Kong. Victor Wong as the guy who's telling the story, the bus driver Egg Shin in the story. I don't think there's any relation between Carter Wong and Victor Wong. And also another one of the three Storms, the guy who plays Rain, is Peter Kwong, who's a karate champion and a dancer. So we've got Hong Kwong and two Wongs, and one of the Wongs is from Hong Kong. So anyway, what I was gonna say is this movie drew protest from Asian American groups who said it reinforced negative Asian stereotypes. Do you see any stereotypes in this movie? I've never seen any of this stuff before. They just made this stuff up, and 20th Century Fox was hiring umpteen jillion Oriental actors to be in this thing. What are people thinking? And besides, the two Wongs make it right. That was a lot of work just to get to that one line.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Big Trouble in Little China on TNT.
Kurt Russell is great in this movie. I really think this is one of his best movies, even though people don't normally mention it when they talk about Kurt Russell. But he's doing that fake John Wayne thing, and that just cracks me up. This was the fourth movie that Kurt Russell made with John Carpenter. The first one was Elvis, the TV movie with Kurt as Elvis, which is a little ironic because Kurt's very first film role was a bit part in It Happened at the World's Fair, an Elvis movie that came out in 1963. But Kurt's an interesting story. He basically got into acting because his dad was an actor. His dad was Bing Russell, best known as the sheriff on Bonanza. Remember, Lorne Greene would always be trying to get him to do stuff, you know, Ben, we need to talk. Remember that guy? Okay. Anyway, Kurt started acting at 9 years old and became a contract player at Walt Disney Studios. And he was in a whole slew of Disney films, including The Absent-Minded Professor, Flubber, and the immortal The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. And at age 12, he had his own TV series, The Travels of Jamie McFeeters, also starring Charles Bronson and the Osmond Brothers. But he always wanted to be a baseball player, and so he never did any acting jobs during the baseball season. And he worked his way up through the minor leagues until he was the #1 hitter in Class AA baseball, and then he injured his shoulder at the age of 25, and his athletic career ended, and that was in the 70s, and that's when he really pitched in with the acting. He was Charles Whitman in The Deadly Tower, and then he did Elvis, and then he did one of my favorites, Used Cars, a very underrated movie. Escape from New York, The Thing, Swing Time, where he met Goldie Hawn, and now he's a big, major, huge, serious money movie star, but at the moment he's sitting in a sewer somewhere in Chinatown trying to cop a feel with Kim Cattrall. Back to the movie. Kim Cattrall, she also defined the 80s in cinema, I think, because she starred in both Porky's and the original Police Academy. Now, that's what I call range.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Big Trouble in Little China on TNT.
So Lo Pan, after 2,000 years of not getting any nookie, has now decided to marry two women, Kim Cattrall and Susie Pie. It's interesting that she goes by the name Susie Pie in this movie because in the January 1981 Penthouse, she went by the name Sue Francis. Why do they do that, you know? All right, you can print 12 pages of totally naked pictures of me, just don't use my name. And speaking of people I'd like to see totally naked, it's time for Joe Bob's Advice to the Hopeless, and to help us out is the very alluring TNT mail girl. Would you pose for Penthouse or Playboy if they ask you?
I don't think so.
Even if they gave you like $40,000 or something?
No.
Would you pose for a guy named Stan with a Kodak Instamatic if he gave you $40,000? Because it's just only he would see it.
It's not a matter of money.
All right, what if you got $1 million to sleep with Robert Redford like in the movie while Marv Albert watched?
Can we change the subject?
I don't know. I kind of like this subject. Your naked body. It's a good subject.
Well, this is about as much as you are ever going to see, so why don't you go and have yourself a party?
Are you in a bad mood?
No, but I'll be in a better mood if we just go ahead and read this. It's from J. Lucas of Oakland, California.
You're in a bad mood.
No.
Maybe the letter will cheer you up. We'll see if it will. Dear Sirs, oh God. Not one of the, I hate it when they start out Dear Sirs, you know? I was appalled this evening at the so-called comedic comments of the host of your Friday Monstervision movie. How come when people write to bitch at us, they always use the word appalled? Why don't they ever just say upset, you know? I was appalled this evening at the comedic comments of your host of the Monstervision movie. A man who portrayed himself as the epitome of the brainless, gun-loving, angry white man, neo-fascist, made light of the poor, demeaned public education, and ended with the solution to all ills in society by urging everyone to kill a liberal. This ignorant buffoon knows nothing of education personally, quite obviously, and reveals the heart and compassion which are more in tune with Adolf Hitler than any other public or private figure I know. I'm thinking this guy doesn't like me, you know? It seems chic these days to spout hatred and blame those in society least able to defend themselves and turn a hard, unfeeling, and deaf ear to those about us. It appears to me that this host must have stepped directly out of his white sheet and into his chair in front of the camera. It would appear that the FCC might need to investigate speech such as this on the public airways, and I doubt if it would be considered protected under the First Amendment, since it espouses the murder of persons solely on the basis of their social and/or political views. I would close with a comment to your, quote, host. There are many liberals who would eagerly meet with him face to face, but I assume that he, like most cowardly bullies, would defer. Sincerely, T. Lucas, carbon copy, FCC. And there's no return address, like most cowardly bullies, you know, but he does send the copy to the FCC. I guess we'll be having a hearing, an FCC hearing any day now. What do you think, Reno? First of all, why did you choose this letter, all right?
Because I thought it was really interesting that he thought that you were in the Ku Klux Klan.
Well, I didn't say go kill anybody. Or maybe I did go say kill. You know, it would help if I could remember exactly what I say on these shows. All right, Mr. T. Lucas, thank you for your letter. But what are you saying here, that liberal intellectuals would like to beat me up? Because what would we do, go to Harvard Square and have an Elizabethan sonnet writing contest? You know, whoops, Joe Bob, you lose. That's an iambic hexameter, not a pentameter. So,
What are you talking about?
I'm trying to figure out what this guy wants from me.
Oh, I saw the show that night. You said, kill a liberal.
I may have said that, and I immediately said, only kidding. And besides, this network is run by liberals, so I was talking about killing members of my own family. That's different.
You're only making matters worse, Joe.
Would you pose naked if I didn't put any film in the camera and it was just me in the room?
So much for politics. I'm out of here.
Better get back to the movie. We're wasting too much time. I just didn't understand what the guy's talking about, was my point. I'm not in the Klan. How could he say that? Go ahead. Roll it. They kicked me out of the Klan in '87. They thought I was an extremist.
Back to Monstervision host Joe Bob Briggs and Big Trouble in Little China on TNT.
I still can't believe it. I can't believe we're breaking for commercial in the middle of the most amazing kung fu sequence ever filmed. This thing goes on forever, and it has every kung fu trick I've ever seen, and a lot of them I've never seen. And this is where they spent about half of the $23 million budget of the movie. So let's get back to it now. Go. How does stuff like that happen? I mean, they hire these kids out of college, they stick them in the editing room, and they go, oh, it's just a bunch of colorfully costumed Oriental guys flying through the air and flinging swords and leaping and tumbling and sucking blood and kicking one another in the head. We'll cut it off right here, put in some commercials. You know, these kids, they have no cultural training. That's a problem. They think Kung Fu started with Rumble in the Bronx. It's pathetic.
Last Call and Theodore Rex on TNT.
Joe Bob Briggs still here. Big Trouble in Little China, a great but underrated John Carpenter movie. Critics just hated that movie when it came out. They acted like it was supposed to make sense. But it was obviously a parody of Hong Kong movies. In fact, Carpenter said that one of the films that influenced it was The Swordsman of Mount Shock, and it was definitely filmed in the Hong Kong style. They used the huge Stage 6 on the 20th Century Fox lot, and they built every single set. Even the outdoor scenes were done on a big sound stage. I think it's hysterical, but it didn't do that well in 1986. It's one of those movies that people started watching later on cable. And I hate that when that happens, because by then it's too late. You can't help the filmmakers. It's too late to help the actors. If the movie doesn't succeed at the box office, it's always considered a failure. And I'm stalling for time here, because coming up right now is Theodore Rex. And you know, my mama always said that if you can't say anything good about something, then just don't say anything at all. So, roll film. One of the finest achievements of the great comic actress, Whoopi Goldberg. What kind of name is that, by the way?
I don't know.
Because her last name sounds Jewish, Goldberg. Sounds like a jeweler in Brooklyn, right? And her first name sounds like a sound made by Bozo the Clown at a children's birthday party. Whoopi. Who names their kid Whoopi? Well, dear, she's not an Esther. Dolores might be a nice name, maybe Tiffany. Hey, I know. What were we doing when she was conceived? Oh, great idea, honey. Maybe your parents owned a novelty shop near the Jewish toy market in New York, and they sold whoopee cushions.